From 2000 to 2010, humor on the early internet and in broader American culture was arguably the most simple and direct. Referencing a single ironic animal, like a moose, cow, or narwhal, or fruit item, was enough to make someone giggle. This style of humor popped up in other places at the time, from Invader Zim to Twee culture, and it often gets called LOL so random humor. But yeah, I came up with the idea for this episode without the LOL so random term in mind. I was just interested in how both Twee culture and the early internet got so obsessed with just saying, like, blurting out the names of animals and food items. I think I was trying to block out that there was a term for this already.
Yeah, but there's also like variations of it. I think there's kind of like I think it later survived in a kind of rainbow lol so random Nan cat style. And there's also the kind of like darker, macabre gallows humor side of it too.
Yeah. I came up with the term zimmy humor that I will throw out there still, but I feel less confident in it. Because actually, this is our second go around recording this episode. Yeah. We lost the file.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen too often, but it is frustrating. It makes us lose a week when it happens.
No. But yeah, so zimmy humor from Invader Zim, which you're like secretly a fan of, aren't you?
Yeah. No, I was approaching this topic as a long-term stan of Invader Zim and this like LOL so random humor. But a lot of it isn't that funny, you know, upon reviewing some of the videos that I used to think I liked. I found I just wasn't like laughing at all. But yeah, I think a lot of people want to block this period out of their memory, but I've always been willing to reconsider it.
Yeah, it's in that window of like cringe where we're past it, but not far enough. You know, it doesn't seem charming in hindsight. It seems like unfunny and lame.
I think it's getting a little bit socially acceptable to think about it again, because I saw a post on Reddit today where someone just shared a screenshot of the Homestar Runner landing page, and then everyone was saying they like were nostalgic about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I'm trying to think when the Vine, like not resurgence, because the website never really came back, but people sharing Vine comps again in college for me. So at some point before 2018. But yeah, people start to like yearn for a simpler days of the internet.
Yeah. The style of humor was like super, super simple. And I think it operated very differently than other forms of humor that came before it, in that it wasn't really about trying to make other people think you were witty with how smart you could be about the joke you were making. Instead, it was like you would just blurt out something and then you would laugh at the other person's discomfort.
Yeah.
That was the funny thing to you. It wasn't about making the whole room laugh.
I feel like it has some kind of historical roots, maybe, in like absurdist humor or in comedians like Andy Kaufman. That guy who would like inhabit a very strange character and kind of like toe that line between like, does he intend to be funny or is this funny on accident? Like unnerving people to the point that they laugh. But that does seem very different from what you're talking about, which is just entertaining yourself by kind of being quirky and zany.
I feel like a lot of cartoons at the time, they would have like a character that was kind of like this, where
the crazy character.
Yeah. Like think of like Cheese from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends.
Just the most unhinged character.
Yeah, because like you as a viewer would find them really entertaining because everyone was getting annoyed by their antics. Yeah. But then if you imagine that person in real life, you wouldn't be laughing at them.
As we'll get into talking about Boxxy. It's very unnerving when this stuff gets like jumped from the animated world to the real world.
It definitely does. But yeah, so what was humor on the early internet like? I think it's good to start by thinking about who the internet was started by, because that's largely who it was populated by in the beginning. The type of person who was likely on the early internet, I imagine them being the type where they are very excited about the minor improvements in technology and just seeing the capabilities improve over time. They weren't looking to the internet to be their main source of entertainment. Any humor that was going on initially was a bit accidental.
Yeah, it's drawing from like, you know, the internet first is military scientists, maybe not the most naturally funny people, and then into research scientists. Again, not a deep well of humor. I think that's why a lot of early internet humor is just drawn from more classic nerd things like Star Wars, Star Trek, Monty Python too. It's just like not even modifying that stuff, but just taking it and translating it into the new format. It was kind of taking legacy nerd culture and loading it into this new medium.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most rudimentary forms of humor. You see children do it all the time, where they'll hear a quote from a movie and then just start repeating it to their school buddies all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you remember when the Simpsons movie came out and everyone was talking about Spider-Pig?
Oh my God. Yeah, no. I think my parents, like, as something I'll bring up later in this episode, but like I'd perform these bits for my parents as like little entertainment. Something feels kind of like old school and Lindy about that, like reciting these things, like kids serving as just little like little clowns for their parents to laugh at.
Yeah. But I never thought it was funny when kids would do that. But yeah, for people who don't know how to be funny, they usually start by just imitating what makes them laugh. But this genre of person, the type where like they're really just engaging with the technology because they get this mild pleasure out of the minor improvements that are happening. I've encountered that genre of person through my professional work in makerspaces, because a lot of the people in 3D printing, they're more interested in the quality of the prints and seeing how smooth it can be or how high definition it can be. It's not really about the actual designed object. And they're just in it for the love of machinery, basically.
Yeah, that's like, I don't know, the title of technologist is not used a lot, but I think it could be used more as an epithet of it's someone who cares more about the technology than what you actually do or accomplish with it. I mean, we need those people to push these like forms of technology forward, but yeah, they're not gonna, I think, particularly generate amazing things. It's interesting though, like the tools we use to make things like 3D printing, and then how it impacts the art that you actually make. I remember reading this piece by an architect who was saying that like the structures that people work within, the software that they use for architecture, like is constraining their actual like design process. And so more architecture firms, if they want to be groundbreaking, should be making their own software. But that pulls from such a different mindset and talent pool from architecture that like not enough places do it. And he says that's what's going to separate like good from great architecture firms. It's like Pixar uses their own in-house secret software to animate stuff. And I still think they have an edge over like the Despicable Me type stuff. Video game companies do that too, like Guerrilla Games. That's why Horizon looks so high quality. They're not using off-the-shelf stuff.
No, they make their own in-house. And then they shared it with Kojima for Death Stranding. So those two games use the same engine. But on technologists, I've never really been a fan of Silicon Valley. That's kind of why I came up with the idea for the Silicon Valley aesthetics episode, because I low-key had an agenda. I didn't want to do that episode because I loved the aesthetics coming out of that region. Instead, I had the agenda to like paint the picture that Silicon Valley is an ugly place because the people there have ugly ideas.
I like how you wouldn't say that in the original episode, but it's like, haha, the big reveal. I have strongly held beliefs. Like, I respect it.
It's not just me, though. I mean, like Dasha, just a few weeks ago, she tweeted out something about how I don't want tech freaks with bad social skills and even worse taste messing up this beautiful nation. Like, people are getting really pissed at them and realizing that they kind of suck.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was kind of boring to pile on Elon and those and like Sam Altman, that guy who works for OpenAI. But there is just such like I don't think I have anything like intellectually in common with them. Like a love of like, not even tradition, because that makes me sound like a Riv Turn type guy from the internet, but like, of like classical beauty or any of these things. Some of them espouse that stuff like from a right-wing angle. We can tell their heart's not in it. They don't actually know and appreciate beauty. They just want to like solve humans out of existence in a lot of ways. Yeah.
With all those people, it's like, what are you amassing power for? Because they're not using the wealth they generate to make the world more beautiful. Yeah, it really just seems to be about power for power's sake.
Yeah, they're not making Carnegie libraries and stuff. Like, not to like have, I don't know, rose-colored glasses for the industrial robber barons, as they're literally called. But like, come on, you got to give us some great works.
Yeah, it's better that than a think tank, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can start to discuss some of the content that went viral on the early internet. But first, it's interesting to note that videos, even though they were much harder to disseminate in the beginning than pictures, they actually were going viral before images ever did. I think because people had an idea for the formula that like video should follow from television and movies. That was easier to do than figuring out how memes worked. Yeah. That took a lot longer.
Do you think there was like an era in the early internet of video primacy and then kind of a photo meme era and then the great, 2016 pivot to video that a lot of social media networks pushed for. Do you think there was ever a time when photos were more powerful?
I would say if it was possibly with the social media era before Vine and TikTok and Instagram Reels. Potentially, like I think Tumblr and Instagram possibly, but yeah, I'm not too sure. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I think it's maybe in the jump to like people scrolling on their phones for memes and entertainment more, like, or maybe constrained by data at that time. Like if you're at your home computer, you're going to watch videos, the good connection. I don't know. I think I'm kind of grasping for straws here.
Yeah. But no, I think for the earliest internet, it was really text-based. Like, yeah, just forums and things like that. Nothing crazy. But the first video to ever go viral on the internet, I think it was an AVI file, but it was Baby Cha-Cha in 1996.
The dancing baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was reading about the creation of this, and the creator himself was like, I think making this as a proof of concept for like Disney or like some like large established animation place. And he kind of filed this away under like, oh, it's too weird. Like, it's like people won't like this. There's something uncanny about it. Like in early 3D animation, the hardest thing is always going to be humans. And so that's why Toy Story is toys, Bugs Life is bugs. Like they waited a bit before they felt really confident in portraying the human form. And even the first humans they did old people, like in Jerry's Game, that short with the old man playing chess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause that's like
a core memory.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just such a large gulf, like to jump the uncanny valley. But if it's just inherently ridiculous, I think that's why it escapes the uncanny valley a bit. The fact that a baby would never move like this. So like,
not even just a baby, but just people. The way it's like wrists are moving is a bit impossible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think though that like with the internet from the very beginning, it expanded what people were allowed to think was funny. Content that was weird, I think it would go viral in part just because people wanted to be like, what is this? Like, do you have an answer?
Yeah.
Like, why would people be emailing each other this video of a dancing baby? Yeah. It seems very benign now. Like, but content that is this simple still manages to go viral. Like, do you know the spinning cat meme?
I think so. It's a 3D animation of a cat just like in a very neutral pose rotating, or no?
Yeah, it is rotating. But when cats are shown this video, they oftentimes lunge at the screen.
It just must seem so incorrect to them. That's not how their people move.
Yeah. I feel like it's probably just something with motion, like the way the cat managed to spin looks like it's prey. And then it's also a cat. It's like something they visually recognize.
I think it's always interesting. My dogs never really like watched TV in any way. I think because when we got them, we had a small TV. We had like a 32-inch TV. And then I met my uncle's dog, who was a small puggle, and grew up with like a 70-inch TV. And that dog actively believed what was happening on TV. Like my uncle hadn't watched Animal Planet for like 8 years because he couldn't put anything animal on there. Yeah. And even I noticed like in some like dog food commercial that had an animated dog, the fact that it barked and was vaguely dog shaped, that got the dog going. So I'm like, I just would stare at this dog staring at the TV, trying to understand like how does it know what a dog is?
Yeah. Its umlaut was very, very
wide. Yeah, and very wide.
Yeah. And then another video to go viral on the early internet was The Spirit of Christmas in 1995. So this was a short video or two short videos that were commissioned from the South Park creators by a Fox executive. The Fox executive then sent those videos to close friends and family, and then it ended up on the internet. And then Fox originally didn't think the humor was like refined or palatable enough to like be financially successful, so they decided not to produce the South Park show on their network. But then it got posted online, it went viral, Comedy Central noticed, and that's how we ended up with 26 seasons of that series today.
I wonder if it is like the fact that you consume this internet content alone that opens people up to laughing at the absurd and the inappropriate, targeting things like the Pope, like, these like very commonly held things you shouldn't make jokes about.
Yeah.
There's always been transgressive like comedy on TV, but like I think people we have a much wider berth on the internet because there isn't a centralized censorship system, at least at this time.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't a review board, like there was for TV. They were not going to like sink that much money into testing whether or not like South Park like would be financially viable because nothing like it had existed before.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that the show's had so many seasons, and I think it actually is kind of even better in some ways than it was when it initially came out. Like it's still like holding strong and doing very well. But yeah, it's like people were able to discover new types of humor that they didn't even know they had just through the internet.
That's interesting. I don't think people would guess that you're an Invader Zim and South Park guy.
I'm not a South Park guy.
You're a South Park enjoyer.
No, I just think that like it's very on the nose with their cultural observations. Yeah. The way they fuse together ideas always feels really timely. And I think that's impressive. Yeah. But no, I'm not like watching adult animation in my spare time. I've admitted to a lot of things.
Nothing inherently wrong with that.
No, I've admitted to a lot of cringe things, like previously liking Pokemon and watching Star Wars shows on this podcast. But no, I'm not like watching Family Guy on my days off.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to bring up the evolution of dance?
Yeah. Another like proto-viral video was The Evolution of Dance, which is this video of a guy like in a conventional comedy setting. He's at it's like a one-man show basically. And this very swaggy white guy goes through all the periods of dance. And it went viral kind of 3 times between 2006 and 2009. I think the internet was growing at such a clip, this way that there was always like every few years a new chunk of people who hadn't seen it or hadn't been shown it. And then they were able to rediscover it. This is just like I don't know. I haven't seen a graph of like internet utilization by population in a while, but I imagine this was a real upswing like that 2006 to 2009 period.
Yeah. But also the emergence of social media sites allowed content to go viral in a way that was different than before. Because previously it was direct contact that would result in like content becoming viral. Like you would send an email to your friend with a link and be like, watch this. And then with social media, you could just post it. And then people would stumble upon it in a way that they didn't before.
Bridging the gap would be like forum sites, but those just had that kind of like techier side to them. Like the kind of framing of social networks is just like, if you're an average person, you should have a Facebook account, versus these forums were a little more specialized and often about a topic, like bodybuilding forums. Yeah. An eternal fountain of like internet bizarre things.
But I feel like every forum always has like a random or off topic board where you can post things, including funny videos like this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never been like too into the evolution of dance. I think it's fine, but I feel like part of the reason it went viral was because it was somewhat professional looking.
Yeah.
Content at the time, it was just so hard to create it for the internet because you needed both the tech skills and you needed to like be creative on top of that. So for this guy, getting it on the internet, I'm sure was like was something that like not every comedian could do, but he managed to do it and it went viral.
Yeah. And then so the other side of like viral videos would be flash animation.
Yeah. So a lot of these initially were self-hosted websites like Newgrounds, You're the Man Now Dog, eBum's World, and Something Awful. I didn't spend a lot of time on these sites, but they were kind of like what I was just describing, where on top of creating content that was funny, that people liked, you also had to have these tech skills. And in many cases, you had to create your own website yourself just to get your content out there.
You're the Man Now Dog, YTMND. I didn't really like watch this stuff when I was on the internet at that period, but I think a lot of stuff like I realized you sent over a video called We Didn't Start This Website, which is made in 2007, and it's kind of like a best of all the like cultural memes and touchstones that have come from the YTMND website. And I was like, oh my God, it's all from there. Just stuff I forgot about. And kind of what I said earlier about legacy nerd things, like they have the Khan meme of William Shatner in that one Star Trek movie. And then one of the memes they list is just Darth Vader. It's just the existence of Darth Vader. And they kind of like take credit for that. And I'm like, this is not a lot is good from this period.
Yeah, content that like had come out decades before was getting a new life on the internet. Like I've never seen Tron, but Tron Guy was a thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He would just wear a Tron suit. I kind of forget if he did anything else, but that was enough to get him some attention.
It's like a pudgy white guy with a walrus mustache or something. Kind of. Man, I wonder how he's doing now.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time on these sites, but I did spend a lot of time on Homestar Runner. Homestar Runner rocked because I grew up with 5 siblings and we didn't have a computer room per se, but we would go into the dining room where we had our shared desktop computer and we'd show each other videos, and oftentimes the content that was like weird would get the best reactions out of our siblings.
You were kind of like one-upping each other. Just like, I have something even stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny. I think that's like a suburban urban divide of the computer room. You know, I feel like a suburban home, you'd have a computer room, you know,
like purpose built.
Not purpose built, but like, you know, your parents are in the house buying mood. They got upsold on an extra bedroom that they had no genuine use for. So that became the computer room. But having a computer in the dining room, I think that's a lot more, you know, within the city limits kind of living.
No, I mean, my childhood home had a fair amount of rooms because I had so many siblings.
Yeah.
But I mean, my childhood bedroom was even in the basement.
Yeah.
Like we had the space, I suppose, but there were just all these kids that needed bedrooms. So
I once toured an apartment with friends in college, and it was 2 floors. It was the bottom 2 floors of like a 3 flat. And the first floor was a gigantic master suite with its own bathroom and jacuzzi. And then there were 3 bedrooms in the basement. And I'm like, who is this for? Because as college students, this is terrible. Like one person is going to live it so much nicer than the rest of them. But then even for families, like you just shove all the kids in the basement. I guess maybe that is good. It's better than having one kid above ground and then the rest in the basement.
Yeah.
You know? That kind of creates a hierarchy.
I mean, moms need a master bedroom to cry in.
Oh, God. One time I was watching House Hunters, and this one mom's like non-negotiable. She's like, I need a toilet suite. Like, you know, like separate from the rest of the bathroom, because that's my little mom zone. That's where I can do my mom things. And I'm like, there's a lot going on here. Like, I'm not...
Yeah. But did your childhood home, did it have a computer room?
We had, in Germany, we lived in this very narrow and tall duplex. And on the 3rd floor, it was kind of a weird area. There was a bathroom up there. There was a lot of stink bugs that had like infested up there, but they were usually well behaved. But yeah, that's where we had the computer. We had terrible like German dial-up internet. And so I remember waiting so long to see the hamster dance video. I finally got to see it.
Yeah.
It's great.
And did you see Homestar Runner as a kid?
Eventually, yeah. My cousin would show those videos to me. I wasn't like a diehard, but I saw the greatest hits, you know, Trogdor the Burninator, all that stuff.
I still think it's really funny.
Yeah, I think it holds up better than a lot of stuff from that era. Like it just seems to follow like conventional joke structure and timing, and the voices are fun.
Yeah, because the Flash animation is very simple. I think it really is the voices.
Yeah.
Boys in the 90s, I guess girls too, but something that like children of the 90s would do to entertain themselves is just do impressions. Like one of my older brothers, he can do a ton of different ones from SpongeBob to Mickey Mouse. And I feel like whoever was behind Homestar Runner, they like had the same talents where they just were able to add so much like depth to just like the dialogue.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, there was like a small comedy boom in the 90s. I think the bigger one was in the 80s, if my understanding is correct. Like Eddie Murphy, basically, and Jerry Seinfeld, like blowing stuff wide open. But I don't know, I think impression comedians sometimes get maligned with prop comedians as well as kind of being like less original. I remember seeing these signs in Las Vegas for this guy, Frank Caliendo, the man of 100 voices. And I'm like, man, he feels like a relic a bit like from that era. But I don't know, I'd always do impressions to make friends laugh and stuff.
Yeah.
I won't do them here. I do a great Ray Romano, but that one's kind of cheating, I feel. It's easy.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be so, like, life used to be so boring. I mean, you would like...
What? I don't think so. What, pre-internet?
Yeah. No, it's just...
People lived.
No, but I'm just saying, like, the things that, like, school children would do to entertain themselves included things like spinning things on your fingertips or, like, flipping your eyelids inside out. So, I mean...
I'm sure kids are still doing that. They're just saying skibbity toilet afterwards.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know. I don't feel like people of my age cohort did impressions very much at all.
No. You're right about saying that, like, it is more of a boy thing, though.
Yeah, I feel like it is. And then in the series, like, I didn't know this, but the inspiration behind Homestar Runner was, like, the co-creators of the series were in Atlanta when the Summer Olympic Games were happening. Whoa. And so both Homestar Runner and Strong Bad, you can see how they're based off of, like, Olympic sports.
Oh, a runner and then, like, a weightlifting athlete,
or like a boxer.
Oh yeah, interesting.
But all the other characters in this series are just like blobjects.
Yeah,
they're just like orbs.
I like the kind of varying quality. I think you can tell, like, the coach, what's that, Coach Z, like he must have been an earlier character, and the cheat must have been a later character, because like the level of detail and the kind of like quality in their character designs. And then Coach Z has a classic Chicago accent, which I think is very good. I don't know if they have some kind of connection to that, but it's pretty unmistakable.
I like his accent, but also Strong Bad. His voice, before he even says anything funny, just like the tone will make me giggle because it's nostalgic for me. I have the same thing with Mrs. Puff too.
That's a really good voice of like exasperated, middle-aged, like lightly Midwestern woman. I don't know, that's such a good voice.
Yeah, I always loved the jokes he would make about flooring it and then crashing his car.
It's elementally funny.
Yeah.
So another Flash animation I want to put on here, which does not age well, is Foamy the squirrel.
Yeah.
Did you ever see these?
I did not. I watched it a bit for this week though.
Yeah, my dad was a big fan of these. So he watched these and then he would show me very edited chunks of them because they're like pretty inappropriate for kids. So my dad would have been in his mid-30s. And this is kind of like weird, dark goth, much more in the Invader Zim kind of style.
Yeah. This series, I think it is very exemplary of early internet humor because it's so like LOL so random. It's very like zimmy humor.
Yeah.
I like the aesthetic of it, but it's not really funny at this point. It's sort of like a time capsule, you know?
Yeah. It's like over leveraged on the offensive and random parts of it. A pretty good example is the Amityville toaster video, which is one my dad directly showed me. I remember I would do bits off of it. It's you put different stuff into this toaster and then different like first like obscure things come out of it. Like you put in toast and a pumpernickel comes out, you put in pumpernickel, blueberry muffin comes out. But then it becomes like, oh, if you put in this, you get a human hand. And that's kind of like the goth gore part of it.
Yeah.
I guess.
But just the joke being this recurring feedback loop of just like there being a random food item. That's so like LOL so random humor, you know?
And then it's got like a clear ripoff of the Chipmunks. It's kind of thing is like, what if Alvin the Chipmunk said fuck? And that's just not funny to me. Like that's not cool. Like it's pretty low level.
Again, I do like the aesthetic though. I think that you look at it and you don't even need to know that the creator of the Foamy the Squirrel web series, you don't need to know that they took inspiration from Invader Zim and Jonan Vasquez. But he has confirmed publicly that he took inspiration with the goth girl in the series, Jermaine.
Yeah. You know, there were a lot of animated goth girls at this time, I feel.
like goths were way cooler in this period during the mid 2000s. Like the goths of the 80s are a little bit too dressed up, but this period where they get a little electroclash and slutty, I think they're cool.
Yeah, it's like the bored suburban mall goth kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, could this be considered a little bit of like older brother core? Watching Foamy the Squirrel videos and then listening to Avenged Sevenfold and playing Halo?
Yeah, I mean, this ties into the Attitude Era. It was the same period. And when I keep saying Attitude Era on the podcast, I'm not referring to WWE as much.
I mean,
I'm talking about
but the broader cultural forces around.
Specifically that Think Piece video that I saw a few months ago that left a big impact. But just, there was this zeitgeist of the time where like, boys' content was being marketed by being edgy and provocative. And that was getting a lot of attention. And then I'm thinking that like Foamy the Squirrel, unfortunately, is probably going to be the episode artwork for this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it should be. Like, we're not looking for the best. It's interesting to talk about what stands up, but the stuff that doesn't stand up is the most interesting. Like, where have we most culturally diverged from this?
Yeah, but also it's like none of this content is visually that striking. This one kind of, it's gray. I don't know. I'll do it. I was almost going to go with Boxxy, but then I was like, no, I should let her rest.
Yeah. She's like, I think she gets rediscovered every few years. Like it's almost a clickbait thing of like, remember Boxxy? This is her now. Yeah. And then something, I guess, this is kind of in the Flash world, but Charlie the Unicorn, you'd watch it on a Flash player, but its quality of animation, it's obviously not made in Flash, right?
It could be actually.
Yeah.
I'm not an animator, but it's higher quality than a lot of the Flash animation. I feel like that's part of what got it so much attention. It was just way above like a lot of the other content that was available at the time.
It's got this fun like cutout, like crinkly construction paper look to it.
To me, it looks like clay.
Oh.
That's being molded slightly.
That's true. And then for the magical Leopleurodon, it's like a anatomically accurate Leopleurodon, which I think is really like fun and high def compared to like what else you would see in a Flash animation thumbnail at the time.
But yeah, Charlie the Unicorn, it feels more so like early internet humor when it starts to get into the like Pocky era a bit, you know, when rainbows were a big thing.
Yeah, the rainbows are kind of a late stage version of this, but also the kind of like forest creatures thing, because as we'll talk about Twee stuff later, like that is
Woodland creatures.
Woodland creatures. I don't know why that phrase woodland. Like it's followed by creature for me. I can't think of another use of the word woodland. Yeah. I think this holds up better than I thought it would. Just because like I don't know, the timing is very good of the different responses between the unicorns. And then when I watch this, for some reason, it's just very strange to watch these. Like, we're recording in my apartment right now. I have pretty thin walls. I'm very grateful that no one's making too much noise right now. But I was just playing these videos and I had my volume up and I'm like, man, someone can hear me listening to Charlie the Unicorn in 2024. They must think I'm going through it or something. But it had German subtitles on it, which I thought was really funny. Wir gehen zum Bonbonberg. Komm mit uns, Charlie.
I mean, maybe you had a little kid or baby over to your house.
Yeah, and I was showing him the greats. I was showing him the greatest hits.
Yeah.
So the same creator as Charlie the Unicorn was the Llamas with Hats videos, which again, like, you know, an animal you wouldn't expect. And then, they're wearing a hat, even crazier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I still managed to not remember to check out, even though I had another week. My bad.
No worries.
But I feel like llamas are where it starts to get a bit more twee, which we'll get into in a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're like inherently funny animals.
Yeah.
The chewing.
And they make me think of Napoleon Dynamite, even though I think that Tina is an alpaca, or is Tina a llama?
Yeah, it's splitting hairs. I think they're both good.
They're almost the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is pretty far after Emperor's New Groove, which is great llama presence in that movie. I love that movie. I just like David Spade. I like his like dry sense of humor. I kind of, not to like give any airtime to a commercial, but I like his little ads for Sierra where he has his dry little voice commenting on stuff.
You know what I think it took for an animal to be considered inherently funny during this time period? They needed to be, well, random. They needed to be something that was a bit like unexpected for you to say. Like, say you were to say your spirit animal was cicada. Everyone would laugh.
Yeah. Narwhal, alpaca, like it's not like mouse.
Yeah.
It's got to be something. It's got to be a pivot off of regular.
And I feel like they need to be like not predators too. Like someone who would say like, I like wolves or bears. Like that wouldn't really
That's a
work.
different thing. That's the 3 Wolf Moon t-shirt. That's a whole different type.
Yeah. No, getting a wolf tattoo on your forearm was a different genre of person.
Yeah. No, they're not going to have the kind of levity and like lol XD type outlook. They're going to be a little more self-serious and school shooter.
Yeah. More XD, end up in juvie type.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And then another flash site. So this was actually my starting point for the episode when thinking about early internet humor was albino black sheep. This for me, now thinking about this so much, I don't think it was particularly different than the other like self-hosted websites that we've already talked about. Mm-hmm. But there were videos on it like Peanut Butter Jelly Time, Badger, 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 and the Kitty Cat Dance. And those are just like the entire video. The joke was literally just saying like badger, mushroom, snake. Mm-hmm. That's all. There's nothing beyond it.
Mm-hmm. There's like maybe a second joke in there of how long it goes. It's like, oh, wow. Still going. 3 minutes. Still badger, badger, badger.
Yeah.
But no, I think this stuff also ages pretty poorly. And just also the level of like work into this is pretty limited. I'm a kitty cat video. I mean, animation's hard. Like any amount of animation takes more time than you would think.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so lame that like the Peanut Butter Jelly Time like ended up on like Family Guy. Not like Family Guy is like a high bastion of comedy or something, but it's like network comedy. And their assignment for the week is like, all right, now put Brian in the banana costume and have him do that video that like a child made in a weekend.
I mean, I think legacy media companies are still struggling to figure out how to incorporate viral content into their business models. Like, even with like, you know, the Super Bowl, the Grammys, things like that, they still don't fully know how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier when it's a short turnaround item like South Park. You know, famously, they make an episode in 7 days. They had that whole documentary, like 7 days to air, or whatever amount of time that was. But yeah, so they're able to like keep track with stuff. But like conventional network sitcoms and stuff like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, they would never be able to like put an episode together in time to reference a meme before it already passed.
Yeah. No, it's hard for them. But yeah, thinking about the albino black sheep, I started to realize there was a bit of a connection with Twee culture. So now we can start to talk about that. Yeah. Twee is a bit hard to differentiate from hipster culture. It's kind of more low dose. It's more indoors. It has a bit more of like a librarian aesthetic. Zoe Deschanel is a good example of it.
Poster child, Wes Anderson movies. That kind of like, of all the different hipster visual aesthetics, this is Edison bulbs, 1880s mustaches, fixed gear bikes, but not in the aggressive, speedy way, but in the kind of like mustache handlebar, leather wrapped grips kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, they love things that were slightly antiquated. There's a good aesthetics wiki page on this if people want a bit more information. There's also an Infed Alumni episode on Twee. Those are good resources to learn more. But something that people engaged in Twee culture would do is they would start to have these random animals or food items be sort of a mark of their identity. It was beyond just it being a joke. Like they'd start to run around with whale t-shirts, and maybe they had like a keychain of a whale potentially.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, maybe I look back fondly on this. I think people disparage this era, but I think it had a kind of earnestness, and a lot of things online define Twee as kind of an appeal to that childlike glee or wonder or like unabashed enjoyment of things. I think it's different from the kind of like hipster ironic detachment. I think there was more sentimentality to Twee.
Yeah,
that people forget about.
There was a genuine interest in like antiquated technologies and novel things that they hadn't like previously experienced. Like this type of person later went on to like drink bubble tea for the first time. You know?
I think I was a little bit Twee in high school. I found a film camera and a typewriter in my house that were just like old relics, and I like got them working again and used them and brought them to school. And I wore my dad's old denim jackets. Like, I don't know. I guess that's why I'm going so easy on Twee people, because go easy on me. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, like a group of people you don't have to go as easy on is the people that were still into Invader Zim years after the show ended.
It's funny. It feels like Hot Topic is like the enabler in this, because they never stop selling the stuff. And I feel like that is the reference point for these people. Like, listen, if Hot Topic is still selling the stuff and it's still okay to wear it, like they're the tastemaker of this.
Yeah. But if you saw someone wearing like a Gur hoodie in 2013, 2014, you would have kept a distance.
Yeah.
Because like this style of humor, it's still a bit cringe to talk about it. People don't want to remember it. But right after it ended in the early 2010s, like people vociferously hated it. They did not want to entertain this anymore.
Has this even come back around? Like in our like McBling episode, we talked about that one TikTok girl who is like a period reenactor of McBling. Is there that for Invader Zim?
Not like people wearing head to toe Invader Zim clothing.
Yeah, but I guess they're doing it like Hot Topic. They're lumping it in with kind of Y2K thing. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm doing an alt goth, mall goth, Y2K look. And so of course I'm going to have a little like stuffed Gur hanging off my belt.
No, there are absolutely Gen Z people on TikTok who know how to wear this stuff well.
I am interested whenever anything this alt like gets mainstream backing in the form of a like multi-season long animated show made by professionals. Because when I was a moodier kid, I actually did read a lot of like Jonan Vasquez graphic novels. This is one, if you said that you've admitted embarrassing cultural interests on this podcast, I do own a lot of graphic novels. And not just the highbrow stuff like Mouse, like some pretty lowbrow stuff or worse stuff that thinks it's highbrow, but it's actually pretty pedestrian.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I read like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, which was the work that got
Jonan Vasquez.
Jonan Vasquez. And Nickelodeon is what Zim was on? Yeah, that makes sense. It'd be on Nickelodeon. Not Cartoon Network?
Yeah, it was Nickelodeon.
All right, yeah. And so that's what got people at Nickelodeon interested in his work, but just like, hey, make it kid appropriate. But just like how Series of Unfortunate Events made like gothic satire a like multi-million selling property, like it's very interesting that this very alt goth thing was just everywhere and on network television.
Yeah. It became profitable later through merchandising, but at the time it had really low ratings. It came out around when 9/11 happened, and I think people didn't like seeing this alien invader trying to take over the Earth. It was not the time for that.
Oh, I would think that like in a post-Columbine thing, people wouldn't like moody trench-coated characters, which they had like multiple of.
Oh, well, this is a deep cut, but there actually was this case, and there's a Wikipedia page for it. It got a lot of news attention at the time. But there was someone who like killed their neighbor after watching an Invader Zim episode. And that was part of the reason it got canceled, actually.
Oh my God.
It was the episode where like Invader Zim wants to harvest organs and have like 100 organs inside of him. Oh, and then, that kid went and
I think I remember that episode. I don't know. I guess I was kind of sensitive to body horror as a kid. Just the idea of like the organs and like the stitching together. I think I remember that. Oh, that stuff. Oof.
By the end of the episode, he's like, I'm the healthiest boy in the school. I have 11 hearts.
Some of it still gets a laugh out of me. I don't know what to say.
But most of the humor wasn't quite that dark. I would say overall it is more so early internet where it's like, Zim's ship gets hit by a bee and then it crashes, or like it turns out his body is filled with tuna and he loves eating it. That sort of thing is like more so just in that like Twee vein of just having a simple joke around something random.
Animal, food item, bam, there you are.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. But I hope the show comes back eventually. I feel like with AI, animation is going to get a lot cheaper. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the bar for animation should be lower. I think it should remain appropriately high. I don't want to see what's out there.
We'll see. I don't think there's any other way this show would come back. They tried, with Enter the Florpus Netflix original movie.
I did not know the Enter the Florpus Netflix movie. Everything gets a second life breathed into it. Clone High got a revival, and that had a very small core group of adherents.
Yeah. Well, after the series ended, they came out with that one movie, and that movie, it was planned before I think Nickelodeon did a deal with another streaming service. So it's like the Invader Zim movie on Netflix. You can watch that, but the show, you can't watch it.
Oh.
Nickelodeon is partnering with someone else. I think that might have been why they didn't do anything else.
That's why streaming sucks.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a completionist.
Yeah. But yeah, all of this begs the question, why was this style of humor so prolific at the time? I think it might have simply been the zeitgeist, and I embodied it at the time, as a young kid between the ages of 10 to 13. I would run around and talk to family members and my friends, and I would say things like, I like pie, I like eggs, and that was my way of trying to be funny. Because
I like pie thing. I did that too. It just, I don't know, semi-independently emerged.
Yeah, it was hard not to. It's like, it really was everywhere at the time.
It's so hard to actually develop a sense of humor as a child. Like, you're looking for whatever shortcut you can get. I was actually talking to my grandma, and she was telling me about how my sister and I would do this bit when The March of the Penguins came out. That movie? Remember, like, the very, like, serious documentary, Morgan Freeman narrating the life of penguins in the Antarctic.
Yeah.
And my sister and I would do bits off of it, calling it the schlep of the penguins. And then we do Jewish accents, pretending to be the penguins, complaining about how cold it was outside. And I think that's the first time I independently came up with something funny as a child, as opposed to just repeating things.
Yeah. That's what most kids do. But yeah, that's why this period of humor stands out so much to me. It's because right when I was coming of age, that was what was available to me to model my humor off of. Not that I do this anymore, but sometimes I do encounter people where I find out that they used to like Invader Zim, and then it all clicks, and I'm like, that's why you're like that. There was someone I worked with.
Where do you go from there? What do they develop into? What does an Invader Zim child become as an adult? Art school?
Well, there was someone I worked with when I did admissions at SAC where she would always say she liked cows, and every time she heard the word cow, she'd turn around and pester you and be like, what did you say about cows? But then I found out through a Facebook post later that she was really big into Invader Zim, and I was like, okay, you've been doing the same thing for 10 years and it's 2016. Why are you still like this?
No, yeah, that would get on my nerves. I have a friend who's always had a thing for pandas, and we always lightly tease him about it, but I think he does it in a very charming way because he's bashful about it. He's not boastful. I'm the cow girl. He's like, I like pandas. It's just my thing. Let me have this.
Yeah. My mom was a bit like that in the 90s, She would collect panda figurines. There's always been a socially acceptable way to say you like an animal a lot.
Yeah.
But I think during this time period, part of the reason why people would say they were just really into tacos is they would list that as a hobby or something. It was partly because of usernames. People would migrate usernames across the internet. They was one of the only ways to create a digital identity at the time.
I like tacos 1994 or something.
Yeah, or Panda Fox, or I had a friend whose username was Frothy Buffalo.
Yeah. I was once part of a server for playing a game, Team Fortress 2, and the idea was bear was the theme, and not in the gay way, just bear. And so everyone had their name in some kind of format of bear.
Yeah.
My lame usernames were Momo Jojo 368 from the Powerpuff Girls. But yeah, so that's my Neopets username if anyone wants to hack into that.
Yeah.
You can probably guess my password by doing some combination of animals and foods. I'm sure that's what it was at that period. Also, I'm sure my Neopets are dead. I know they don't really die, but like,
Yeah.
at some point they got to free up the storage.
I could probably log into my Neopets account if I tried, because I think my username on there, this was the username I used a lot when I was a kid. It was like, I thought this was how you spelled Cairo. I thought it was spelled like Kyro, and then I did sire, like the night, like Sire.
That's cool.
It's not cool. It's really lame.
Being nice.
Yeah.
The being into ancient Egypt thing feels like that. What's that aesthetic of like
Coptic Christianity?
No, not that's a whole actual people.
I know, I'm
the
kidding.
Copts. But where it's like the eyewitness books, the DK eyewitness books, like early 2000s kids museum core. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Or what is it called? There's actually
educational. There is like a thing on the aesthetics wiki about this.
Yeah, it's like it's called like Encyclopedia Scholastic, I think maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's on the Consumer Aesthetic Research Institute website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, thinking about all of this, I'm not sure if like this really was as dominant as I think, because it could be bias. It could be that this content was appropriate to show to me, and I think of it as being the dominant humor of the time, when really it was just because that's what my siblings thought was age appropriate.
Yeah. And I think there is something to it where it's always these animals. It's pretty innocuous when your parents walk in, you know? Like Happy Tree Friends is really the one that pushes the boundary most in this, because your parents could walk through in the beginning part of it and they're like, oh, it's a moose and a bunny, whatever. And then, you know, if they walked in 5 minutes later, the moose is getting like hung by his entrails and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, my parents were more concerned about me watching Pokemon. Like,
yeah,
they thought that was like too much.
No, I think I mentioned our Pokemon episode. Like, my mom was skeptical of Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh was straight out. Like, I think it's just because it was so hard to parse. Like, why is his hair like that? Like, why is the dark magician girl dressed like that? And there's also a dragon. Like, it's just sets off so many alarm bells in the Midwestern parent.
Yeah, no, my parents were the same way, where like Pokemon, they experimented with it. I got too hyperactive. So then by the time Yu-Gi-Oh came out, they were like, no, you're not picking up another thing.
We can't have any more toys. We can't do this.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z was straight out for us. That just like on the face, violent. The guys were too ripped.
Yeah.
You know?
Too hot.
Their sons can't see this.
Yeah. Yeah, that all begs the question. So what was humor for adults like during this time period, and specifically on the internet? And I think the place to look is 4chan.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll cop to being a 4chan browser.
You spent a lot of time on there?
Sadly, yeah. I mean, it's Las Vegas. I couldn't drive when I was 14, of course. So what else are you going to do but go on the worst corner, the most depraved corner of the internet with your friends? I remember like whenever that World Cup in South Africa was, I remember I was on 4chan then, because they had this constant playing video loop of the vuvuzela sound at that period. But yeah, terrible to be exposed to that as a child. I'm so happy I emerged unscathed. I could have been someone scrolling R9K forever.
Yeah. I didn't look at it because it had swear words and bad images or violent images. I was always kind of preoccupied with preserving my own innocence as a kid, because I grew up fast.
Yeah, it's a good trait to have.
Yeah, with stuff like that, I avoided it. But my male friends in middle school, they would spend a lot of time on 4chan. So I heard about what it was like from them, and how, you know, they would accidentally access corners of the dark web, and how it was kind of shocking, and all these bad things could maybe happen. And I feel like nerds kind of like that, because they spend so much time online. So then if there were, you know, this element of danger to spending time on the internet, then it suddenly was exciting and not just like a lame nerd thing to do.
I think I had a higher tolerance for shocking stuff back then than I do now. Like, I think I had no sense of consequences because I was a child. Like, oh, if I actually see like a scary or crazy video, you know, I'll be fine. But nowadays, I think, I don't know, we've talked about how like, not graven images, that's the phrase I want to use, but that means like a depiction of Christ, right?
Yeah.
But we've talked about how like certain violent images should be like, I don't know, the mechanism.
Desensitized.
Yeah. Like, they should be controlled by whom? I don't know. I don't want to say. I don't like censorship either. But like, there's some things people shouldn't see, and definitely not children.
Yeah, and not on Instagram. I'm sick of Instagram reels.
No, it's too much.
Yeah. And so, were you on 4chan when Boxxy and the Boxxy Wars happened?
Yeah, I don't know about the wars themselves. I remember seeing the reacts. People just use those all the time, and the gifs of her. I can like picture the one where she like puts her finger to her cheek and is like,
Yeah. So Boxxy is not someone I was super aware of back in the day in 2009 when she became viral, but I find her to be this really perplexing and interesting figure of the early internet because the way she moves in the videos is so like, it's like a time capsule, and it seems physically and humanly impossible to be so that XD.
Yeah, it's like someone not raised by wolves, but raised by 4chan. And just like getting all their social cues from it. And then like, yeah, it's just a translation of the animated world into the real world in a way that should never happen. And so it's unnerving. You can just tell that like whatever she was going through in that period, she didn't have enough real life friends to be like, no, you can't do that. You can't talk like that. Like that's incorrect.
Yeah. Before watching the videos of her for this week, I didn't know that people did the rawr XD sound out loud.
Yeah.
I thought it was just
shouldn't
written.
have broached the like the blood-brain barrier that is like between the real world and the internet.
Yeah. But yeah, people found her really controversial on 4chan. She caused what were called the Boxxy Wars, which resulted in 4chan shutting down for a few hours at one point. She got doxxed. She had to get off the internet for a period of time. Her life hasn't gone too downhill. You know, she didn't have anything crazy happen to her. But I feel like her story sort of demonstrates how, for adults on the early internet, the style of humor was the same. It was still also like LOLXD, random, tacos, waffles.
Yeah.
But then there was this element of danger where joking about this stuff could get you a death threat or like the SWAT team at your front door.
Doxing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy people didn't have terminology like simp back in the day, like for Boxxy. Because I guess that's what the Boxxy Wars would be, of Boxxy defenders, you know, and then Boxxy haters.
Well, they use the terms old F words and new F words.
So it was a dividing line of like, always remember that kind of sentiment in 4chan of just like, they talk about summer F words, which are kids would get off school and they'd be like, oh, I have more time to browse 4chan. As opposed to the gainfully employed adults who are there year long, which is so sad. It's just such a funny thing to be a snob about, of like, I've been on this Japanese anime forum translated to an American audience like longer than you have, kiddo. Like, mind your place.
Yeah, people are very protective of it though, because people who spent online, they wanted to seem cool in some way, at least. Yeah. But I think another like figure that exemplifies, it's not a figure, but this icon, it exemplifies this duality of like the LOL random, but also like this dark web energy. It's Pedo Bear.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's both a bear, which kind of isn't that whimsical, but it kind of works. But then also just the pedo aspect. It kind of does both at the same time.
While also being Japanese, which is a part we haven't talked about.
It's Japanese.
Stuff. Yeah, it's like for some origin of, I think it was probably from whatever the originator of like the 4chan format is. It was something actually Japanese. I want to say 8chan, but I think that came off of 4chan. Lord knows. But yeah, like in this kind of era of absurdist humor, like people drew from a lot of like anime and Japanese references, because whether or not the Japanese content was meant to be absurd, it is rendered absurd through translation into an American audience. So just like, what is happening here? Why is the bear like that?
So is it just like an innocuous bear, and then people were like, oh, it's associated with pedophilia?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That was also a strain of humor in this period. Is that you take something innocuous, it's like, oh, Barney says the F word or something. Like people want, or like, what is it? Mr. Rogers is actually like a pedophile or a war criminal, or he has tons of tattoos. Like people want to take these like semi-sacrosanct figures and make them inappropriate. I never thought that was funny when I was a kid, and I don't super find it funny now. I'll make exceptions for like the Scrappy Doo was found dead in Miami meme. That's funny. That's just, you wouldn't expect that.
Yeah. I like the one where it's Curious George has a body count of 738.
Luigi has committed tax fraud. Like, yeah, it's a little, or Yoshi, I forget.
Yeah. So this brings us to early memes. So, you know, it took a while. It took surprisingly long for people to figure out how to make images become viral on the internet. I think initially they were just weird pictures, like how I mentioned on the net art episode, the giant isopods eating Doritos photograph, which is still popular to this day.
And that style of posting, I've seen it called like important posting. That was one like weird Facebook page I followed back in the day, of just more like uncanny, strange images, as opposed to the more like normie friendly image macros, which was just overlaying that font. I think it's called Impact. There's a name for that, white with the black outline font, which goes on everything. You know, it's always like intelligible. And those really like opened up the floodgates to memes because there was just like websites where you could just like meme generator, where you could slap the text on top of something and then they give you an ugly watermark at the bottom. You try and crop off.
Yeah. I mean, now people have so many tools, like they can just open up a photograph in Instagram and then add text to it really easily, or they can use Snapchat for that too. Yeah. Back in the day, other than those websites, a lot of the memes, the way they added the text was actually with professional design tools like Photoshop, which is crazy to think about. Who would make a meme in Photoshop today?
Yeah, that's a high like barrier of, I just like, now in iPhoto, you can just crop stuff out by holding it. That's how I make all the emojis in the Discord server. Like my friends who have a baby, they send me photos of the baby. I crop the baby out and I send it back to them as a sticker. Like it's seamless. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so much easier. But I still kind of I'm nostalgic for that era though, of when like you would just find a weird picture and save it on your phone because you're like, what is this? And then you'd go back to it and look at it later. There are still some Instagram accounts that try to recreate this, like Software 2050. But I feel like it's a bit post-internet. It's not quite the same zeitgeist, but
they're trying
still
to capture
like,
the spirit of it.
They're perpetuating it a bit, and I appreciate it. But did you actually find those early memes like lolcats funny?
Yeah, I had to admit it. But I would refresh like ICANN has cheeseburger, fail blog, that stuff. I don't know. I was a simple kid. What can I say? I wanted to laugh. Yeah. I feel like I don't really encounter a lot of like straight up memes anymore. Like we have a memes part of the Discord. Our other Discord we're in is like a shit posting part of it. Like I don't know where people are finding these. I'm not on Twitter.
I get a lot of mine through Instagram actually.
Yeah, and I try not to do that, but it's like I want to hold the internet at arm's distance, but I still want to see images that make me laugh.
Yeah. I think a lot of early viral videos were funny. Like a lot of the aforementioned ones, I watched them this week. I giggled a bit. But early memes never did it for me, and they still don't. The only one that that I can remember making me laugh back in the day was like the Oh My God Goosebumps meme. It's like a Girl Scout holding 3 goosebump books. Yeah.
It's an image you can hear. And then when someone like nails it, in terms of like writing what you hear, like, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's
but they recreated that on SNL once and it was so not funny.
Man. I think it's just like how piling on Elon is like not funny. Piling on SNL, like I want to get into, I want to do it because I feel like it's not that funny, but it's like, it's known that it's not that funny. It's like for a different slice of America.
The slice of America that just thinks like doing like an impression of Donald Trump is funny.
No, an ex of mine, like her parents, it was like, what was it? The late night host, Stephen Colbert. It's like every night we'd watch Colbert, and then Saturday night was special because that was no Colbert, but that was SNL. We'd have to sit through that, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. What am I signing up for?
And you didn't sign up for that.
I did not sign up for that.
Yeah. So, do you have like a favorite early viral video from YouTube?
In the kind of like found video as opposed to like made video format, I love Grape Lady Falls. That's where the woman is stomping grapes, then she falls out of the big bucket, and then she hurts herself and gets the wind knocked out of her.
Yeah.
That just makes me laugh. It's really good. Nothing got me like that until the recent video of them doing a helicopter rescue of that old lady, and then the stretcher starts spinning uncontrollably. That had me going. Just like, I hate that the theme among that is old ladies getting hurt. Like, I swear that's not something I particularly find funny. Those get me. In terms of made videos, Story from North America is this hand-drawn stop-motion video from 2009. It's got this like folk song to it. It's very twee for that reason alone, I'd say. But it's like really well made because stop motion is insanely hard. I did it in an animation class I took freshman year of high school that was bizarre. And I think I've talked about in past episodes that we used Miku Miku Dance.
Yeah.
3D as our 3D animation suite because it was free and we had a limited budget. So I learned how to animate anime girls as my first step of animation. But yeah, and so I would wonder what happened to the people who made this because it like actually takes a lot of talent, as I said. And they went on, one of the artists from Miss Kristen Lepore went on to direct Marcel the Shell, which got like a wide release, and then was also a consultant on Everything Everywhere All at Once, which got an Oscar. And now she works on the Baby Groot video series. So get that bag. Yeah. get that money. What's your favorite internet video?
Well, first, I did watch it for this week, as my first time, but it had this like very twee quality that felt kind of like Adventure Time.
Yeah. It's just like strange and like, oh, you wouldn't expect this. Like it's absurd and kind of like homespun.
Yeah. But I find it like very on brand for you that your favorite early viral video was hand drawn and Lindy.
Yeah, and acoustic. Yeah, like you have to have some like touch point to the real world. I don't do well with like super duper internet hyper futurist stuff. Like I need tangible things.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you'll consider this tangible, but my favorite early viral video is the Leave Britney Alone video. So this was done by Kara Cunningham, formerly known as Chris Crocker. And in this video, she is just crying because people and the media are making fun of Britney Spears during her meltdown era when she shaved her head. But this makes me think about my early like period figuring out I was gay and then coming out, because I would go on YouTube and I'd watch like gay YouTubers and hear about their coming out stories. And Chris Crocker's kind of the only one that I keep up with a little bit. I still follow Kara Cunningham on Instagram. But yeah, like a lot of those early gay YouTubers were not very good role models.
No.
A lot of them were low-key, or not low-key, but like explicitly copying black women. Like there's this now deleted video where Kara, when she was Chris, said something about how like she sounds like a black person when she talks because she used to go on gay youth hotlines as a kid and like talk to black women for hours. So then she learned to talk like them.
Villain origin story of Chris Crocker.
Yeah. But I feel like Jeffree Star is like a living fossil from that era. And then I think that James Charles is sort of a modern incarnation of it. But there was so much of that out there. A lot of it's been scrubbed from the internet. That's not what I'm nostalgic for, but I think, yeah, that was like this other weird thing that was going on YouTube at the time.
Rewatching this, she's more put together in the Leave Britney Alone video than I remember. I mean, she's actively crying and blubbering, you know, but like stringing together a pretty coherent case for Britney. And then this, like, you know, 3 years ago or whatever, this got renewed interest as she got freed from the conservatorship. And they're like, she was right the whole time. And it's like, okay, like, let's give this some context here.
I read this really amazing NPR article around when Britney got freed from her conservatorship, where it was the only media piece that Kara did at the time, where she was explaining, like, you know, her feelings on Britney and how they changed over time and how, you know, she's happy for her. But yeah, she was proved right. She was very prescient with that video. She knew what was up.
Wow. It jogged my memory and all these things of like her complaining about the deadbeat boyfriend. What's his name of Britney?
Wasn't it Jason?
Jason type guy.
Okay.
Like a Jason physiognomy.
Yeah. I feel like the mid-2000s bully name was Justin, though. But Justin was her other ex. Clearly it wasn't Justin.
Oh, you're all up on the lore here. No, the whole Britney like conservatorship is just fascinating. That like in the state of California, every other conservatorship was of someone who had difficulty like bathing or speaking, and then there was just one conservatorship that was generating millions of dollars a year to being distributed to the people who initiated the conservatorship. Yeah, that's pretty insane. I do think it's funny the people who like kind of overcorrected on Britney being like, she should be out of the conservatorship, and also she's a genius sending us secret messages. And it's like, I don't know about that. Like, she's not exactly a picture of mental health. She should have her own rights back. But and her behavior post conservatorship, I think, has shown that like, yeah, she's not exactly all there.
Yeah. But no, I love her dancing with knives videos. I love those. No criticisms from me.
No notes.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for doing this episode with me. You know, a lot of people don't want to think about the LOL XD so random.
It needs to be excavated. There's stuff here.
I know. I just think that like it was so strange that humor got so simple. And even in thinking about this for a week, I didn't come to a full, complete answer about like, why was it that people were just so bemused with just blurting out the names of animals and food items? Like, I don't know why, but it is something that I think deserves to be memorialized with this episode.
Yeah. And you know, maybe once enough time has passed, we can go into the kind of like absurdist memes of the mid 2010s, like the Markiplier, Lord Farquaad memes and stuff. But we need, you know, more time to pass so we can understand it. So yeah, if we're still doing the podcast when I'm, you know, like bald and you're tastefully graying, probably knowing our genetics, then we can do an episode on that. But
before we conclude it, I wanted to just give a shout out to a listener. because
Oh,
I
yeah.
was in Los Angeles this week.
Mhm.
They sent us this really cool email many months ago where they wrote about how I mentioned Roger Brown and how you mentioned you were thinking about getting a pet dove.
Yes.
And then they invited me to see the Museum of Jurassic Technology, which I'd never been to before. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, so you're probably getting alarm bells in your head, like, what is Jurassic Technology? It's this very bizarre museum that's sort of in the vein of when museums were like sort of Wonder Common or like Cabinets of Curiosity.
Mhm.
And it has, as many as like 30 exhibits about things you will not see anywhere else. I don't want to give too much away, but I got to meet the founder of the museum. I got to see the trailer that Roger Brown used to live in. I got to go do an aviary on the roof. A lot of cool things happened, but that was a really cool opportunity. So thank you, Roxy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for listening this week. Before we conclude, I want to bring up one thing that I've been meaning to say for a while about the podcast. We do have a subreddit. No one really posts on there.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, check out the subreddit. If you are posting on another subreddit, which won't be named, that is associated with the Right Wing podcast.
With a certain unnamed Russian right-wing podcast.
Yeah, you can post on ours instead of there if you're getting tired of it.
Yeah,
So-
or if that one's going to get banned soon, which I think might be the direction. I don't
in
know.
Elon's world. I
Oh,
don't
wait,
know.
no, never mind. It's going to be elevated, actually. Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you all for listening and have a good week.
See ya.